Hello, and welcome to Regionally Speaking, where we are gathered in the studios of Legacy Communications in East Cleveland, Ohio. We are focused on Case Western Reserve University's Social Justice Institute to discuss voicing and mobilizing for racial equity in East Cleveland. Joining in the conversation are Dr. Rhonda Williams, Director of the Case Western Reserve University Social Justice Institute Alliance, Travell Hart, Executive Director of NOAH, the Northeast Ohio Alliance for Hope, and Brandon King, a lifelong resident of East Cleveland, business owner, a member of NOAH, and the East Cleveland Steering Committee. Dr. Rhonda, as we prefer to call you, please set the stage for us on the subject of the Voicing in Action project and how it dovetails with racial equity issues and became a goal of the Institute.
Sure. So I want to start by saying the Voicing in Action project is a project that we have some taglines for it. Some of the taglines that we came up with as a committee is East Cleveland, Remember When. Another one is Understanding Our Past Prepares Us for Our Future. And yet a third is Leave Words Generations Can Learn From. And so the idea is to think about how we can document, empower, mobilize, organize, listen to the voices, understand the vision, all from the perspective of residents and long-term stakeholders in the community, to then move towards action. And one of the key things that we want to focus on are questions of racial equality, racial equity, racial justice, and also economic inequality, and actually trying to figure out how can we have more access to economic justice in community. And so there's a real, I think, synergistic moment in terms of the work that the Social Justice Institute is really involved in, engaged in, desirous of doing, broadly, and with the work that's happening in East Cleveland and the needs of East Cleveland and the assets of East Cleveland and the aspirations of East Cleveland, particularly around racial equity. I mean, we're in a majority African American community. We are in a community that has both assets as well as economic challenges in terms of tax base, in terms of poverty issues, in terms of desire for more jobs, in terms of engaged and improved access to businesses and establishment of businesses and success of businesses. And Brandon will be able to really talk about that, as will Travell. And they are actually engaged in work around racial equity, around improving community that I think really dovetails nicely. There's a racial equity task force, and Travell will talk more about that, I'm sure, a racial equity task force that NOAH has, as well as kind of a focus on improving businesses. And way before these kind of task forces were identified as such, we began to have conversations around how can we make sure our work actually worked for each other's work. That's a lot of work in there because there's a lot of work to be done. But how can our work for each other's work was really important to us, in that the Institute was actually supporting some of the ideas and the goals that East Clevelanders had from the very beginning. And that's why it's been a pleasure really to have Travell on the steering committee, the East Cleveland steering committee for the Social Justice Institute, and to have Brandon on the Social Justice Institute East Cleveland steering committee. And Brandon is also a community interviewer and researcher for the Voicing in Action project. And just real quickly, the Voicing in Action project is at its core a project that really gathers and is excited about listening to and learning from residents of East Cleveland. So we will actually go out and we will do interviews with residents of East Cleveland, long-term residents, current residents, residents who no longer live here. We want all the voices in the mix to kind of really understand how the community has changed, how it's grown, what the challenges are, not only so that we can document people's distinct life experiences, because it's really important to have that history, but also so we can begin to imagine what we want to see anew in community as we build these relationships. And, you know, I'm reminded about a quote from James Baldwin. And James Baldwin said in a letter to his nephew in 1963, on the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, in a book that he wrote called The Fire Next Time, he told his nephew, he said, "If you know whence you came, there is really no limit to where you can go." And I think that's the power of testimony, and that's the power of history, and that's the power of the work that we're doing.
Well, that's pretty inspiring, I would say. Travell Harp, you have spoken on Regionally Speaking before, and as director of NOAH, the Northeast Alliance for Hope, would you please talk about how you were inspired to carry forward this organization and your hopes for it with regard to the Voicing in Action project?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gladys. I guess, so you talk about like inspiration, and I can honestly say that East Cleveland is my inspiration. I have a lot of childhood ties here. I identify with this community, with my own personal life. And some of the things that I've really seen, I guess my experience has pretty much shaped and illuminated the inequities between communities. And I actually happened to grow up in East Cleveland when I was younger, and I actually live here now, homeowner, proud resident. But like, I think that there's something when you're like in the community of East Cleveland, a prominently African-American community that like a small 3.2 square mileage and everything, and you see all the inequities that we have, all the things that I'm sure like these Cleveland residents that are watching now can sort of like relate to. But when I look at the contrast between what we have here and then what's like in surrounding us, like in University Circle or in Cleveland Heights and everything, I know that there's a difference. And I think that inequity is wrong. And so some of the things that we really want to do is build strength in communities like East Cleveland, all across the greater Cleveland area, to be able to address those inequities and begin to like remove those barriers out the way so resources can come into our communities. And so I really see NOAH as an instrument or a vessel, a platform for that actual change to happen. I mean, one of the things that I think that really drives me, I've heard this once before and everything, and I always say it to the leaders that I come in contact with, is that we ought to be active participants in our own solutions. And so I say that to say this, and I think that NOAH, being that platform that actually uses community organizing as a tool to really activate people in community to be active participants in own deliverance. And so, so what I see NOAH as doing is actually being the instrument of change in community and leading to really eradicating those inequities that we see from community to community.
All right. Oh, that is inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
Brendan King, you are a lifelong resident of East Cleveland. You are a business owner and a member of the East Cleveland Steering Committee. As such, you bring much to the table on the subject of voicing and mobilizing for racial equity in East Cleveland. What are your hopes for this effort with regard to the Voicing and Action project?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on tonight. I'd like to thank Dr. Rhonda and Travell Hart as well. Being on the steering committee, I think what excites me is growing up in the community. I know the residents, I know the challenges. I've seen how the community has gone down. But one of the things that I know from growing up and knowing people in the community is that there's never been a close relation with East Cleveland and University Circle. And as Travell and Rhonda alluded to, access to resources. There are beautiful resources in East Cleveland. There are beautiful resources in the University Circle area, whether it's the Art Museum, the History Museum, Music Settlement. And a lot of East Cleveland residents don't even know about these resources, that they can go right down the street, heck, in walking distance and view. And I'm excited about the work that I'm doing with Rhonda in Case Western Reserve and also with NOAH. And as Rhonda quoted, you have to know your past in order to move to a better future. And I think getting these oral narratives will help us talk about some of the problems, some of the challenges that we've had. It'll uncover a lot of the stereotypes, a lot of the misunderstandings, a lot of the how people in East Cleveland got to a sense of us and them, right? And through NOAH and the Social Justice Institute, I'm hoping that we can get to a place where it's a we. You know, and you hear all the time on TV how communities are talking about regionalism and coming together. this is just another form of regionalism as far as I'm concerned.
It is indeed. And that's one of the reasons that Regionally Speaking wants to hear those voices. What you're bringing to the table is what we want people to hear. And so I thank you very much.
I mean, it's important. The relationship building that's going
Yes.
on is important. So, you know, I gave a litany of, you know, it's documentation, it's empowerment, it's mobilizing, it's this, it's that. And I think what's really important is that there's relationship building going on.
Exactly.
There's the moments that we have together where we're really trying to build and working on and being successful at building trust, thinking about reciprocity as a part of the formula that is part of the work that we do. How can we mutually benefit and mutually provide for each other and think about each other's goals and move in tandem with respect for what people in community want, what people in community have already done, and what people in community want to begin to do, and also lend our expertise and knowledge to the degree that we are finding that ourselves in the moment with people, as well as bringing some things to the table that they could also benefit from as well. And, you know, I think what Brandon said is really important too, because there's a way in which, you know, back to James Baldwin, there's a way in which people can be trapped in history, right? Trapped in history in a way that history is written based on misunderstandings, based on myths, based on stereotypes. And what we're trying to do is really diffuse that, dismantle that, unpack that, and really hear the voices of people and community. And I think those relationships are really important. And the power of testimony is really important. You'll hear me say that over and over and over again. You heard Trevel's story. His story is inspiring. Brandon has an equally inspiring story. The two people sitting on either side of me have equally inspiring stories. You know, folks will hear from LaVora Perry and Nia Perry Richardson, and they won't get a chance to meet Jared, but they'll hear a little bit about him. They have inspiring stories. They are all East Cleveland residents, right? And their voices matter. So, you know, it really is about how do we let the voices be heard? How do we expand the voices and then use those voices and think about those voices as we plot progressive action to social change and social justice?
We're going to take a break now, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the challenges and how they are going to be addressed.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Regionally Speaking, where we are gathered in the studios of Legacy Communications in East Cleveland, Ohio. Our guests are Dr. Rhonda Williams, Trevel Harp, and Brandon King. And this is the question I want you to consider. What are the challenges as you see them moving forward with what you have so brilliantly outlined in the first part of our time together today? Trevel, lead off.
Thanks so much, Gladys. I mean, I guess when I think of challenges, that's the challenges that we face pretty much warrant the work that we do. One of the reasons why I'm so happy to be in relationship with Dr. Rhonda Williams and the Social Justice Institute and the Voice in the Nation Project is because I believe that the principles that they have as far as like really unfolding people's stories and getting those things out in the open is pretty much the building blocks of what we organize around. I mean, because getting people out of their homes and begin to talk about like their fears, their aspirations, and their desires for community and everything, and realizing that their neighbor right down the street have those same type of aspirations and everything will allow us to really easily organize around these type of equity issues. Realizing that these values that we hold up so dearly within our four walls of our homes are shared with a Brandon King or shared with LaVora Perry. And so I think that really opening up and then unpacking that is like, that's the challenge, but that's what we're here to do. That's what we're commissioned to do. So really talking about racial equity piece, I really want to just share. So Dr. Rhonda and I, we actually had, a while back, we showed a documentary of East Cleveland. It's called A Time for Building. We're going to be showing that again June 30th for you guys who are interested. So keep your at the East Cleveland Library. So keep your ears open for that announcement coming out. But anyway, this documentary really like highlighted the time where East Cleveland became integrated and some of the challenges that it went through. It was a short 30-minute film. But after that, we had a really deep and rich discussion about equity, about the fact that this is now like a 90 percentile of African Americans, and what does that mean for us, and how do we rebuild? And so I just like to read this vision statement that we actually came up with. And so it says, to get from where we are to where we want our city to be, we must forge a vision and the power to execute that vision. That power must be built on social capital and integrity. We must evaluate our histories. We must inform ourselves of the systems that created the conditions that we want to transform. We must share our testimonies and dare to dream. We must inspire to be the change that we want to see. We must organize and act. We must exceed our own expectations. Only then can we begin to rebuild our city. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And that's the work that we're really trying to do. So uniting people through their testimonies, their powerful testimonies, their legacies and their stories, and really beginning to draw people together around those interests, those values that I believe East Cleveland is so rich of.
Those are abiding challenges. They are, and I'm hopeful that you have explained them in the way that you have, so that we have that understanding of what is involved here. Rhonda?
I mean, I agree. There's a lot of echoes in what Travell has read, and of course we put our heads together. That was a very interesting night. We watched the movie and watched it again, and
I forgot to give my wife credit too, because she was there too.
I was going to say, don't forget that now.
Yeah.
So, you know, and really came up with that vision statement. And I think some of the things that you hear in the vision statement is the issue around root causes. You know, what's at the root of some of the things that we are seeing playing out right now before us, right? And we have a good sense sometimes of what's right in front of us in terms of the challenges, but we don't always know how we got there or really what went into creating that challenge. And if we are to understand how to tackle the challenge, then we also have to understand what went into creating the challenge that we see. And I think that's really part of the work that we want to do through the Social Justice Institute with the Voicing and Action Project and with the other work that we're doing. And the other thing I want to say, Travell mentioned how the basis of some of the work that he's doing, really the basis of the work that he's doing is around mobilization, is around getting people to build relationships and then to come together through those relationships to actually enact social change. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, again, you know, Brandon is sitting here, other community interviewers and researchers who are part of the Voicing and Action Project. In fact, most of the people in this first phase who will be interviewing people in community are from community. They are East Clevelanders.
Yeah.
So Brandon King, Lavora Perry, Nia Perry Richardson, you know, Jared Perry Richardson, Lillian Sharpley, Pamela Owens, Jeannie Joy, Hank Smith. I mean, we can just continue. Michelle Hill and Earl Williams. You know, I know I'm forgetting somebody. Brandon, help me out. And Travell, help me out with who I'm forgetting. But these are people from East Cleveland who are excited about the work that we're doing, who came and actually did the training. There was 3 rounds of training. We finished 2 of them. One focused on the ethics of doing this work, because it's really important that when you move in community, you move with integrity and you move with ethics. And that's one of the things that Travell read in his statement. The question of integrity is extremely important if you're to build trust and to develop a community bridge building aspect that is reciprocal, right? And they took oral life narrative methodology training. And now we finally got our technology. And so we're going to do technology training. It's going to be audio and video. It's going to be exciting. And these are East Clevelanders. Yes. We have a Shaw, a high school teacher, a Lori Arigati Eiler, who's participating. She brought 3 students who are East Cleveland residents, young people. So it's really, really exciting. And we are ready to get out there and get started, and it's just to be out in community. And we want to invite anybody who would like to be interviewed to be a part of this. And if they want to be involved in other ways, because it's not going to stop with just the interviews. It's going to move on to how do we share the interviews in community? How do we let people hear other people's voices and hear what they're saying? How do we do this through various forms of communication? And we're thinking about theater. We're thinking about short documentary. We have all kinds of ideas, and we need more and more East Clevelanders who would be willing to participate in that process to be a part of it. Because again, it's about documentation, empowerment, mobilization, organizing, action, and change.
How can you let people know how to do that? How can they get in touch with you in the program?
They can call.
They can call. Okay.
They can call 216-368-7568. And that's the number for the Social Justice Institute. They can also email me at ryw@case.edu. And so those are 2 primary ways that they can get in touch with us. We have a department administrator as well for the Institute who actually is also involved in doing some of the training and helping to move the project forward. And her name is Shelley White Godson. And they could also email her, stw3@case.edu. And they can reach her or I through that 368-7568 number.
Good. That's important.
But you know, I talked about training, and I want Brandon to talk about
Yes,
you know, his experience,
please.
you know, with the training, and you know, really bringing the invisible, making the invisible visible in all kinds of ways. I mean, his testimony itself and his family's testimony, just in terms of their roots in the community, is really exciting. And I don't know that I don't know how many people know that.
Well, they're about to. Take it away.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Brandon.
I'm born and raised in East Cleveland, and I come from a big family. One of 7 children, various aunts and uncles who live, work, and or own businesses in East Cleveland. So we have kind of a rich culture, and we've been here since the 60s. I've been through the training, and going through the training and thinking about challenges, I would guess one of the challenges would be getting the subject to open up to you, and then getting the pertinent questions out without stifling their response, allowing them to just open up, and at the same time keeping in mind that you have a time frame to look out for. So that would be one of the challenges, and the training covered a lot of that. It kind of taught us how to move through an interview, how to move from one question to another and get out the information that's needed for our purposes. I think another challenge would be having a breadth of people to interview, not just residents, but residents who live and then work in the community, residents who live and maybe own a business in the community, or maybe someone like Angela Mia, who still has his shop here. What does he think? What is his story of East Cleveland? And I can tell you, growing up and coming through Shaw, we would go to the football games, walk up Shaw, and then walk over to Angela Mia, sit down, have a pie. The football players would come. We would all have a good time, and you'd all walk home. It's not a sit-down restaurant anymore. So, you know, there's a lot of stories to hear, and I think our challenge is in getting that broad perspective of different stories in order to put.
Right.
Yeah, if I can just interject, I mean, I really think that's important.
Right.
Like, so I see this as actually like a tool to help really move and mobilize people into action, actually really transform this community, to really get people to see. And so, I mean, I guess it's, when you talk about racial equity, you talk about the differences between community and community. I want to see East Cleveland residents working. I want to see our housing stock become revitalized. I want to see the tax base restored. And I think that there's a strategy into doing that. But I guess in doing that, we need to get people on one accord. And I think lifting up these stories so people can see the values that we all share can help us really like latch onto a vision to really revitalize this community. And so, simply put, I really want to. So there's definitely, like, in our region, a lot of resources that we have. And what we want to do is remove the barriers in a way that from preventing those resources coming in community. Also, I think it's important for us to really lift up and be able to see and recognize resources when there are resources coming in the community. And not only that, but like to really build strength to be able to influence those resources so as a benefit to the community. So I think those things are really important. And I think that the story part of it is important. Is really getting around, so that there's a really quick story. So in the Bible, the children of Israel, pretty much, they got delivered from.
I like this one.
They got delivered from Pharaoh and everything, and so when they was walking through the Red Sea, they began to lay stones in the center of the Red Sea and everything. And the reason why they did that is because when the water recessed, when it came back, their children will walk by and they'll see the stones in the river or in the sea, and they said, "Mom, Dad, why are those stones in the sea?" And then they begin to go into the story of how they came over, how God delivered them. And I think that that's why these oral narratives, these oral histories are so important, because they allow us to be able to document where we're at right now, even though sometimes people may feel like there's no hope left, but there is hope. But the thing is, when we be able to go and document those things of where we come from and everything, and when we go attack all these things, well, not attack, but when we go and reclaim all these resources in our region, we can look back and say, this is where we came from. When our children look back at these films and these documentaries and these stories and testimonies of people.
Right.
Rhonda, I invite you to make a closing
You know,
statement.
that's one of my favorite stories that Travell tells. That and be active participants in your own deliverance. He says solutions, but he also says deliverance. You know, I think leaving words generations can learn from, again, is very important. And taking action to develop a better community is really important. Ella Baker, who actually helped found the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was a major student organization in the 1960s that actually helped to bring about voter registration and civil rights legislation, and was working on the ground with grassroots people through a form of engagement she called participatory democracy. Ella Baker would often ask the question, who are your people? And I think, you know, what Travell just articulated and what Brandon has talked about, when she talked about who are your people, she just didn't mean what is your lineage? What are the generations behind you? She meant that, but she meant more. She also meant, who do you keep around you? Who is the collective you? And who's engaged in the process of engaging with social change in a way that that collective you is always thought about. So, and for her, who that collective you was would tell you about a person's standing, integrity, responsibility, accountability, engagement around issues of intrinsic and extrinsic concern, around issues of racial equity, around issues of economic injustice and inequality, around issues around gender and the way we treat people based on who we are. And I really think that this oral narrative project, this voicing and action project, which starts with the voices and ends in action, has the potential to do so much, even more than what we've talked about right now. And that's what excites me. And it excites me because I'm doing it with people in community who are helping to move the process forward, as well as steward the process forward. The steering committee that we have also has East Cleveland residents on it, and they are helping to make some of the decisions about how we move forward. I think that's critically important, and I'm really excited by that. I'm really excited by that. So
I have to say, this is one of the most exciting programs that we've had, and I thank you all for the spirit in which you're moving forward. It's really working. It really is. I applaud all your efforts, and I support them, and I thank you all, and I thank Legacy Communications for housing the production of this program today at East Cleveland Landmark. Thank you.
thank you, Gladys.
Thank you so much.